Welcome back once more. If you're just joining us, this is Sunday edition. We're coming to you live from the KTN News Center here in the Kenyan capital, Nairobi. We are talking about that controversial finance bill of 2018 that President Uhuru Kenyatta finally signed into law on Friday. Now, let's talk about the working relationship between the executive and the legislative arms of government in this. And a lot of people have criticized Parliament for not looking out for them. Prior to the vote on Thursday, the CS, Treasury, Henry Rotich did meet parliamentary leadership. Let's listen in.
National Treasury Cabinet Secretary Henry Rotich held a meeting with members of the National Assembly Finance Committee ahead of debate on the President's reservations on Finance Bill 2018. Members scrutinized some of the proposed taxation measures by the President and how they'll affect Kenyans. President Kenyatta says the price difference between kerosene and diesel is the main motivation for fuel adulteration that causes pollution and damage to vehicle engines. Consequently, the President wants the price of kerosene and diesel harmonized. The new levy shall be at a rate of 18 shillings per litre and shall be paid by the importer.
In terms of public participation, really, ERC did their best, they presented to us, but we were not convinced. That's why it did not land in the bill.
My question then is,
to fix this problem is just to have there should be no price wage between diesel and kerosene. And that is exactly what Tanzania has done.
The President wants value-added tax on petroleum products levied at 8%, backdated to 1st September 2018. This will earn government an estimated 17 billion shillings by the end of June 2019.
The output tax will be taxed at 8% because we want to lower the consumer price, but the input tax will be at 16%.
we are not being truthful about it, that the VAT is only on the distribution. It's the whole chain of fuel.
The President also wants a 12% excise duty on fees charged for money transfer services by mobile phone service providers. Telephone and internet data services shall be charged excise duty at the rate of 15%. Excise duty on fees charged for money transfer services by banks, agencies and other financial service providers shall be charged at 20%. These new tax measures, if implemented, will raise 7.6 billion shillings to fill the revenue shortfall. In order to support the housing pillar of the government's Big Four plan, the President has introduced a contributory scheme where both the employee and employer would contribute to the National Housing Development Fund. Consequently, Uhuru has proposed that an employer shall pay to the National Housing Fund 1.5% of the employee's monthly basic salary and a similar contribution from the employee, provided that the sum of the employer and employee contributions shall not exceed 5,000 shillings monthly.
Housing, transport and housing were there. The HOTU, represented by Atwoli, was there. In fact, it is out of that meeting that they raised it from 0.5 to 1.5.
The President has proposed an excise duty of 20 shillings per kilogram on sugar confectionery, including white chocolate. The National Assembly had dropped this item. Uhuru has proposed that winnings in betting, lotteries and games be taxed at 20%, while prize competition will attract 15% tax, down from 35% that had been agreed by Parliament. Kenyans will be watching keenly to see whether members of the National Assembly will endorse the President's proposals or they'll flex their muscles and exercise their independence by marshalling two-thirds majority and overturn the President's proposals. Patrick Amimo, KTN News, Parliament.
Thank you, Patrick. Sorry by Patrick Amimo. That was done prior to that vote on Thursday, of course, but just taking a look at that meeting between the Treasury Cabinet Secretary Henry Rotich and parliamentary leadership, and that is where we're coming in this conversation. And after that vote, some members of Parliament are vowing to impeach the Speaker or remove the Speaker of the National Assembly, Justin Muturi.
In the House today, I can assure you members and Kenyans of goodwill who are listening to us today, I doubt even if whatever that has happened today in the House is happening in Ethiopia or even Somalia or even Southern Sudan. Muturi is a letdown and is a shame to the House. And in Duale, the entire leadership of the House is a shame. And as members of goodwill who are supporting the Kenyans who are overburdened, we have purpose that tomorrow we shall be going to courts. The courts, if they rule otherwise, we will definitely accept. But I want to assure you Kenyans, if we don't arise, my friend, the nation is going in the wrong direction. I want to point out.
Ndugu, hakuna kuomba rais.
I want to say that
nataka kusema namna hii.
Hakuna cha kuomba leo.
Mturi in this evening, yes, the speaker himself has threatened me on the floor of the house. He said if it was happening outside parliament, he would fight me physically.
He's a man, he said he will be able
He said, and that's what he said. I want to tell him, in Swahili we say, chuma chake kimotoni. It has started now. This is the time the house has started claiming now it is growing back. And we would want to show them that a time has come for them to shape up. Or otherwise, they'll shape out.
Are you saying, Mheshimiwa, that you will, as members, impeach the speaker?
Yes, that's the process. That's the process that we are starting. And he will go.
He will go.
Yes.
So we are saying that the House is reclaiming its position.
Yes. That's what we are saying.
But one thing.
All right, so it's a lot of things that Kenyans have been talking about because they have taken their frustrations to social media to talk about how many of them have been saying how wrong they were to vote in the way they did on the 8th of August 2017. But this must, how do we judge or how do we judge Parliament in how they've done in this? Because we know Kenya is a presidential system. There is no opposition. There is a majority and a minority party. Both of them are supposed to, in a bipartisan way, oversight what the executive is doing. You can't fault the Jubilee Party for supporting the president's proposals. What about the NASA side of Parliament, which is under Raila Odinga, who has a working deal with Uhuru Kenyatta? I mean, it's a murky situation, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It's very complicated. But what we saw in the National Assembly, that's the benefit of this handshake. Because the handshake serves the interest of President Kenyatta and Raila Odinga. I don't know whether it captures
the two of them.
Yeah, the two of them. I don't know whether it captures the interests and aspirations of other Kenyans. But the two leaders having taken that decision, then you begin to ask yourself, these other members of the National Assembly, do they actually understand the standing orders? It's embarrassing that you have a member of the National Assembly saying, tunaomba rais. Tunaomba rais for what? And you're members of the National Assembly. You're the ones who make the law. And if the president brings it back with reservations and you don't like it, make sure you've got 2/3 at the National Assembly. Automatically, it becomes law. So in my view, either they don't understand the standing orders, and maybe Muturi needs to give them another trip to Mombasa for them to understand the standing orders, or they're just playing mischief to Kenya. And I think they're just taking Kenyans for a ride. Because when they're supposed to be at the chambers debating, they are standing by the lobby watching the TV like any other Kenyans who is not a member of the National Assembly. So there's a bit of mischief there. And you see, if you're a Kenyan and you are employed like a majority of the people, what we don't realize is that for 12 months in a year, you spend the first 6 months from January to July. All the money you make for those first 6 months, you're going to pay it in tax. Then the balance is what you are going to be taking home. Now, with that kind of information, how do we allow ourselves to elect mediocrity to the National Assembly? Because those guys, when they were interrogating Rotich, they were asking questions that you may consider to be frivolous. All of them were just focused on 16%, but they had come with so many expenditure proposals and revenue-raising proposals, but they just zoomed in into 16%. You would have expected clever members of the National Assembly to run with 16% but reduce the tax burden elsewhere. Like, for instance, when you're told that you're going to be contributing 1.5 of your salary to buy a house, what if you already have a mortgage? Why should I be contributing money to assist somebody get a house? I mean, wouldn't these guys be a bit clever? Look at the minister in the eye and come up with the proposals. Did they do any research? I suspect they don't even understand those numbers. When Rotich is making a discussion, they ask questions because they want their voters maybe in Mosocho or Nyambene or Mombasa to realize that our MP is at the National Assembly and is giving us a good deal. And in my view, if we need to make progress, we must start listening to voices of reason.
All right.
And I do not know him, but Dr. David Ndii has been making very nice proposals, but you know, people rejected it because he was linked to NASA. And if we want to make progress, we should be looking not for a NASA solution or a Jubilee solution, but a solution which is going to serve the best interest of Kenya. And at this stage, I want to mention, something that Kipchumba has said, that who was the primary loser? It's, of course, Wanjiku. But you see, Wanjiku, most of the time, Wanjiku has nothing to lose. Yesterday, I saw Sharon Mumanyi did a piece about a gentleman who stays in a car somewhere in Kibera. But I did not see the Kibera MP, Ken Okoth, very active at that floor. So maybe 2022, when we are going to vote, we must be sure that we do not enjoy buyer's remorse. And then number two, Kipchumba has also indicated that Musalia Mudavadi has not been saying anything about this. Musalia Mudavadi is on record as having given proposals. As late as yesterday, he requested the president to fire the entire cabinet so that we get new people coming on board and get people who actually understand issues.
All right.
So sometimes you get cabinet secretaries going to the National Assembly and they give msomos to those members. I mean, it's very clear. And in my view, we cannot now start saying that it's buyer's remorse and we wait till 2022.
All right.
Maybe we need to get a strategy to kick out these guys.
And maybe we need to mention that Musalia Mudavadi actually was praising the president's proposals, saying you would have liked, you wanted the VAT to be lowered to 12 or 10%, and the president did one better and did it at 8%. So he was actually praising Uhuru Kenyatta's proposal. Mark, did you see any kind of oversight from the legislative arm of government in this?
You know, I'm laughing because I just written a point here to say the biggest problem we have with parliament is that many Kenyans voted for their parliamentarians based on their ability to insult and diss the other side. You basically nominated a Chicago hip-hop artist whose only profession is insulting people, and you gave him the job of oversight. If you voted for someone for the ability to say Mundu Mugoroki or things like that, when they went to parliament, there's no one to insult. So that's why there's no oversight. But the second thing is this. Kenyans should be very clear. You are angry today. My question is, where are you directing that anger? The anger should be directed at two things. Number one, it should be directed at the fact that our country is morbidly corrupt. Okay? We are as corrupt as they come. We are a nation of thieves. Sisi ni wezi. And we should, first of all, begin to repent from there. We should begin to realize that unless we deal with corruption, I can bet you next year we will increase even more tax, because let me tell you something, greed has no end. It will not stop. So unless you want to work from January to December for the coffers of the corrupt, then your anger should be directed at making sure that your corrupt neighbor who lives in a lavish home, and then you go to worship him at his parties, that's the person you should be stopping. Let me tell you, the problem is not even in Nairobi. The problem is in the village. When Dismas, who's the Dick of Mosocho today, has a 2-bedroomed house, he gets a government appointment. The next day he has a 16-bedroomed house, and I saw they have now rotating dining sets, and that's what you are going to celebrate. Then you are the reason why tax will increase. And I can predict for you, if corruption is not handled, you will pay 20% tax next year for petrol. The second thing, there is a lot of debate around this housing tax. And let me just tell Kenyans, let's first assume that it is used correctly. This is probably the best idea in all these tax things for one simple reason. The reason why slums exist in Nairobi is because you who earn 100,000 shillings pay 5,000 shillings to your house help. Where will she stay? Okay? So you're not paying for someone else to own a house. You're paying for your house help, your watchman, and that family to get a house at the rate of 1.5% and not exceeding 5,000 shillings. I think we owe it to the rest of Kenyans to give them decent accommodation. I appeal to our hearts to do that.
That's a
Number
good
two,
point.
let me finish. Give me 20 seconds. Number two, this idea that it has been paid by the importer is only good news for the government, because that means they collect their revenues at source. But for the consumer, you're still going to pay that tax, because there's no one who pays tax on your behalf. Okay? Lastly, one of the biggest losses for me in this debate is two things. Number one, Wanjiku is left without alternatives. Okay? If you're going to make kerosene expensive, are you going to make biodiesel available? Are you going to make alternative sources of energy available to the common mananchi? That's one. Number two, if you're going to increase taxes by this much, what alternatives do you have for the 19-year-old boy who finished Form 4 and he wants to start a business? How are you going to shelter that business from this tax regime so that he can stand? The biggest loss is not taxes for me. The biggest loss is what business environment are we creating in our nation for it to develop.
Thank you. Karl Marx, from where you sit, from that clip we just saw, there's a group of members of parliament who seem to have the right kind of thinking. They are saying that we are going in the wrong direction as a country. But then they look like lost sheep because the leadership in parliament thinks we are okay, both minority and majority parties. So where is the balance?
You know, parliament is the only body that is mandated actually to oversee the government and also to hold it to account. Often you will see they will actually summon the audit institutions, the ombuds, the anti-graft commissions, actually to ensure their independence and actually to strengthen their apex in terms of their accountability. Now, by the mere fact that they could not actually agree, they need to be whipped. Imagine you've elected a member of the parliament who cannot think that, first of all, he needs to be whipped so that they go and reason as the person who has whipped them. So that tells you that they are not there to serve the common man, but they are there to serve their interest. So long as the CDF can be there, nobody can complain. Because the fuel, you know, when you talk of the adulteration of that fuel, look at it this way. Who is this crook who has actually gone beyond the government authority to get to the level whereby he can actually get the DSL and the kerosene to be at one thing, and then you can't complain? So the government is a coward. I mean, I use the word coward because they have actually given the avenue for these cartels to realize that they have their environment, that even if they do anything, they can go away with it.
All right.
So from that level, I think we need now to come back to senses, whereby if it is about the representation that we are talking about, if it is too high, it is high time now we revise this plurality system of governance. And then we adopt now the more inclusive electoral system that can now bring on board the diversity identities.
All right.
Which, of course, one, I think the objective of the proportionality of our seats must now be in line with our votes.
All right.
We need to have accountability in terms of the constituency, the durable government, the minority holding office. But if we go on the way we put it, I can tell you it's not even today people will be talking of it, but the next minute it will be too high on us.
Let's take a look at what Kenyans have been saying about this following that vote on Thursday for the finance bill of 2018. Let's listen in.
Ridiculous. Totally dead. Kenyans have no hope except to pray to God. In fact, I've come to realize that the handshake of the two people, His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta and the handshake to the right Prime Minister, was meant to pearl the Kenyans deep. Because if they are going to increase the fuel, that means sugar will come up. That means flour, unga will go up. That means people will not travel, there will be no movement, then where are we as Kenyans?
Naona kama kwamba kama sisi wa Kenya tunaumia sana kwa sababu tusiangalia charges ya mwananchi wa kawaida, tunafinyika sana kuhusu maisha. Juu kila mmoja haswa anaangalia kuhusu wenye tulichagua ili kwenda kututetea kule bunge, lakini pale ila ni kutuzusha tu chini, bali haana jukumu la kukumbuka mwananchi wa kawaida.
Vile naona hizi mataksi zimeongezwa, sisi kama wananchi tumefinyika kweli, na ile kitu imetufinya zaidi ni constitution ambaye imeajiri watu wengi ambaye hawana maana katika parliament.
Inamaanisha kwamba 80% tunalipa deni ambao sio yetu. Hiyo deni inaingia kwa mifuko ya watu. Kama serikali ingechukua hatua, hii pesa ambazo wanapiga ufisadi, wasipige ufisadi na sifanye mambo. Lakini pesa ambazo wanakopesa wanaweka kwa mifuko yao.
All right, Kipchumba, have the final say on this. Should Karl Marx mention about MPs thinking for themselves vis-a-vis party positions? Should they or can they go against the parties for the sake of Mwananchi?
Democracy, the party, Mwananchi, it is a balance that it must be. They must strike a balance whereby each and every of the three subsectors must be seen to win, and it must be a compromise. Then we must also realize that democracy in itself, it's rowdy by nature, and at times disagreeing has to be forceful. That is what happened in parliament. It means that our democracy grows. That is what distinguishes Kenya from other authoritarian states or authoritarian societies. Therefore, we should not condemn ourselves. It is part of growth, whereby we must look at it that it is a continuation of what happened in the 6th and the 7th Parliament, where people could walk out and do all manner of things. It means that there is something going on. But back to the tax issue, we must also talk to the problem that we have had. We are running a political economy whereby what is budgeted is influenced by what politicians say outside there, and we end up influencing our budget through very weird mechanisms. First of all, we cannot continue having a welfare state whereby we have free maternity, free school, free education, all those and all this is passed to the people who pay taxes directly, the 3.4 Kenyans. We cannot continue that way. And now we are even going to free housing, or we are trying to get housing, and so that the people who earn salaries are taxed. Look at it this way, Ben. Is it possible that we can tax people to make sure that everybody owns an iPhone, not a smartphone? No, it does not make economic sense. Just like housing, it is not a priority to every Kenyan that they must have an house, but it is a priority to every Kenyan that they must have food. Therefore, this calls for us to go back to the basics. We must reset ourselves to the basics. The basics are that let us have the backbone of the economy of this country working. The agriculture sector has died. Beginning with the sugarcane industry, we need to have that industry back and running so that farmers can sell their cane and take care of their own problems. We go back to farming of maize. Maize farming is now stalling. Farmers have thousands of bags in their stores, and nothing is happening, which means Mwananchi has no money in their pockets directly. The government can try to tax, but there is an extent to which taxing can go. Therefore, what we need to do is to set some of these things back to where they ought to be, so that Mwananchi have the money themselves. It will be easier to pay taxes. The other thing is this. We cannot, no matter how much we tax, if we do not fix KRA and KEBS, we are still in a problem. Because how comes for the last 4 years, KRA has not been able to meet its tax obligations, but it has continued existing as it is. It is now upon our parliamentarians, instead of taking us through the shenanigans that they want to go to court, which is an act in futility, they should now start giving us way forwards, so that by the end of the next budgeting process, we are reducing VAT on oil and petroleum products to zero.
Not adding. All right. On that bombshell, let's leave it there, that conversation, very important conversation. Keep it going on. Tell us what you think on our social media platforms. The hashtag on Twitter is KTN Sunday Edition. You can tweet us using our Twitter handles. So tell us what you think. SMS us on our studio lines. You can also ask the questions that you have. Let's take another quick commercial break here on Sunday Edition. When we come back, we shall be discussing the President's latest Gazette notice on Friday, the 21st day of September this year, where he made several appointments to various parastatals, a Gazette notice that puts the spotlight on some reforms he did start in 2013 when we were first elected into office, even setting up a task force to help consolidate some of the parastatals that were doing similar work. Is this being discarded? We'll talk about that, of course, and those who have been appointed to those positions. Some NASA politicians or figureheads getting what pundits are calling a soft landing. Don't go too far.